And the article starts off is, where does the physical world come from? Matter at its smallest observable form, atoms pop in and out of existence all the time. And the idea that physical matter is birthed from a non-physical realm, such as the quantum vacuum or the void, is something else we are unaware of, is not novel, they said. Tesla himself believed that all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance, a tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha or luminiferous ether, which is acted upon the life-giving prana or creative force, calling into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. Now, my comment on that is, this physical matter going beyond the physical realm and into another realm is observable when the human cells begin to duplicate at the start of a human's life. Cells disappear and then reappear with double the number. And the question is that your source spark being created as one with one, which becomes one-on-one with the one? And the question for the listener, given what has just been revealed, have you determined this version of one-on-one with the one? Who or what are the three components? Something for you all to ponder on. Now, a paper published by Parahamsa Tiwari in the journal Physics Essays explains, a century from now it will be well known that the vacuum of space which fills the universe is itself the real substratum of the universe. Vacuum in a circulating state becomes matter. The electron is the fundamental particle of matter and is a vortex of vacuum with a vacuumless void at the center, and it is dynamically stable. Now, my input on that is, the void is the singularity. It is the all and it is the nothing, depending on what is manifested there. All suns have a singularity. If you are able to stare at the sun for any length of time, you will see the void or the singularity inside the sun as a little black dot. They go on, the speed of light relative to vacuum is the maximum speed that nature has provided and is an inherent property of the vacuum. My input on that is actually not true. There is travel beyond the speed of light, and as we advance as a species, this will become common knowledge. They then said the vacuum is a subtle fluid unknown in material media. Vacuum is massless, continuous, non-viscous and incomprehensible, and is responsible for all the properties of matter, and that vacuum has always existed and will exist forever. And they said that scientists, engineers and philosophers will bend their heads in shame, knowing that modern science ignored the vacuum in our chase to discover reality for more than a century. And it said this non-physical field may also be dark energy. We don't really know or understand it quite well, but we know it exists. Now, my input on that, it is energy that has yet to manifest light, and that's why it's dark. If you go into your unlit home late at night and it is in total darkness. Yet one flick of a switch changes all that. If you turn on multiple lights in the home, the dark void no longer exists. And it could also be said that the dark energy field does not have the 7 primary matter contained within that space to then generate life, which generates light. Now, a declassified Defense Intelligence Agency document touches on this, but it says we do not understand why it exists or how it is created. We simply know it provides an ever-present force on space-time, causing the universe to expand. Indeed, recent high-precision experimental observations indicate dark energy may be a cosmological vacuum energy. Now, my input on that is, who says it's expanding? Could it be the reverse effect of a railway line? Because if you look down a railway line, to our vision, the track closes up, and yet it is the same width all along. So then they ask the question, so if our material world is birthed from this non-material stuff, does consciousness play a factor? It is interesting to contemplate, especially given the fact that consciousness is not a physical thing, nor is it the result of any known physical process or biology. My answer to that is, yet the non-corporeal can engage in the physical, so why can't consciousness? They then said you cannot pinpoint or find the source of consciousness within the brain. My answer to that is, because it's not in the brain is why. High levels of consciousness comes from the heart, which is where your soul spirit package resides. The vessel itself is not the causal effect of the consciousness, it is the soul spirit, which is multi-dimensional. They went on, even at the quantum level, factors associated with consciousness have been known to change the behavior of matter like photons, suggesting that matter itself may be a conscious perceiving thing. And then they said, does this mean all physical things possess some type of consciousness? Photons don't have a brain, do they? Was their question. My input to that is, consciousness does change matter. But why do scientists insist on relating these matters to the brain? You will not find the answers in there, or using that organ to ascertain higher levels of knowledge. And as long as they keep repeating mind over matter, their understanding will always fall short. How about using let's get to the heart of the matter instead? They went on, what about plants? There is a growing amount of evidence suggesting that plants act and behave in ways suggesting that they are thinking things capable of feelings, emotions, perceptions and thoughts. My input to that was, really, it's a living thing and has many of the same attributes as we do. That is hierarchical arrogance to suggest that other living things don't have what we have. And have these people asked, why are plants nutritious to us? Because they have the same life force energy as why. They went on, if consciousness can have such an influence over matter and is a non-physical property that exists within all living things, how could it somehow be responsible for the creation of reality? My answer is that non-physical property is the soul spirit. And he said this has been a common theme discussed within the realms of quantum physics for quite some time. In fact, the discussion of ether, this non-physical, indescribable stuff, has been the subject of contemplation for thousands of years. Plato wrote about the ether in his work Phaedo and explained how life exists within it. He believed what air is to us, the ether is to them. Is the ether alive? Is the universe itself, which could be primarily made up of this non-physical stuff, a conscious living entity? Now my response to that is, of course it's alive. And quite frankly, I find that a strange question. If there was no life, there would be no suns, which we call stars twinkling in the night sky. And they said you cannot explain consciousness in terms of the existing fundamentals like space, time, mass and charge. As a result, the logical thing to do is to postulate whether consciousness itself is something fundamental to the existence of reality, to view consciousness itself as one of these fundamentals. Now, my input to that is, consciousness is the manifestation of the thought, which can then determine how it manifests in terms of the physical or non-physical. Why do you insist the universe is not a conscious intelligence when it gives birth to conscious intelligences? Cicero, 44 BCE. Correct. Now, another paper emerged claiming that observers are responsible for determining physical reality and that conscious observers themselves generate and create the structures of space and time. And what they said was, what's interesting to contemplate here is that if this is true, it would include all observers within the universe itself, not just human observers. Now, my response to that is, hence the term we use in our show, observe, not absorb or immerse. Because an observer can then become the creator of reality depending on what levels of manifestation is available. And to give you an example of that, an artist is an observer and can then create the painting. But if the artist was the canvas, the same painting would not emerge. It cannot see. Remember the double slit experiment, where tiny bits of matter are shot through a slit forming what's called a wave pattern of probabilities and possibilities. And when an observer is introduced, the wave function collapses. Now, my input to that is, because the observer is altering the field with non-physical influences. Why? Now, one of the authors of the paper, Robert Lanza, said that observers can dramatically affect the behaviour of observable quantities both at a microscopic and massive spatio-temporal scales. In fact, a profound shift in our ordinary everyday worldview is necessary, he said. The world is not something that is formed outside of us, simply existing on its own. My input to that is indeed, as this show has stated, everything you need is internal, not external. That is the purpose of religion, to make you believe everything is external. And Robert Lanza said observers ultimately define the structure of physical reality itself. How does it work, he says? And Lanza contends that a network of observers is necessary and is inherent to the structure of reality. And as he explains, this is my input now, observers, you, me, and anyone else live in a quantum gravitational universe and come up with a globally agreed upon cognitive model of reality by exchanging information about the properties of space-time. And Lanza says, for once you measure something. And he said the wave of probability to measure the same value of the already probed physical quantity becomes localized or simply collapses. And my input to that is, which makes the theory of the expanding universe completely mute. And he said that's how reality comes to be consistently real to us all. Once you keep measuring a quantity over and over, knowing the result of the first measurement, he said, you will see the outcome to be the same. And he said the implications of this are and have always been quite large. The idea that consciousness itself is fundamental to reality suggests that it must have played an integral part in the creation of reality. That consciousness itself had to exist prior to the birth of physical material reality. And my input to that is, yes, it did. But the great question is, who or what started it? The religious will say God, and non-religious will say source. But no one can answer who created God or source. And Lanza goes on. He said one could go on and on contemplating things like, if consciousness is fundamental to the creation of physical matter, then what created consciousness itself? Where does consciousness itself originate from? Does existence itself even have a beginning? Can the future change the past? And can the past change the future? Now, my input to that is they're all very good questions. Yet, surprisingly, they will not go near the God conundrum in this discussion. Why is it left out? Lanza said, who knows, but the most important point to take away here is that consciousness itself is fundamental to the creation of our physical experience. If we want to change the world, ultimately we have to change the way we think, feel and perceive. Well, my input to that, indeed, and it is the essence behind this very show, think and act different. Because when you do in a better way, you, life and your surroundings change. And you manifested that with your thought, form, which is consciousness. And the key at this point in time in our development does not lie in the vessel understanding it. Inside the vessel already knows and is waiting for you and I in the physical to catch up. So the key is not understanding it per se. The key is trusting in yourself, becoming one-on-one with yourself, which leads to the one-on-one with the one. Understanding the mechanisms comes later. Lanza said that this is a key factor that is directly intertwined with the type human experience we create for ourselves. This is why perhaps sometimes it seems that the greatest resource for powerful people, politicians and corporations is human consciousness itself. In my opinion on that, no. They are spiritually devoid of higher level consciousness, which is why this planet is in a mess, aligned with the fact that the populace itself is too damn lazy to work on themselves. Take personal responsibility, because if all do it, the darkness no longer prevails here. Lanza said, if we ourselves determine what direction humanity heads simply by what we think and feel, just imagine what somebody could do if they could manipulate that aspect within us. The state of the world today, some might say, is chaotic, and that could be a direct result of the fact that the collective mind and heart is not in the state of coherence. And he said, you might say we are all over the place. We're separated by our beliefs and unable to come together in understanding and harmony. This collective state of being in turmoil creates a physical experience that reflects that, which is exactly what we're seeing today and have seen throughout human history. My reply to that is, indeed. When we all realise we are more powerful than you can imagine, things move, things change, and a new creation and creativity is born. Some will ask, show me the way. I will reply, I just did.